Welcome to the only daily podcast focusing on compliance news of the day. Each morning, start your day with a cup of coffee and Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, to hear about 4 of the top compliance, corruption, or leadership stories you will need to start your day. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.
May 18, 2021, the Rehab for Fraudsters edition. We begin with that story from the New York Times as Spain turns to corruption rehabilitation for government officials who can't stop stealing. Con artists and swindlers have long captured headlines in Spain. Now the country has a novel solution, a rehabilitation program aiming to reinsert corrupt officials back into society. Doesn't appear to be a 12-step program, but kudos to Spain for trying something new. Next up, from the Financial Times, Credit Suisse's woes around Greensill still continue as it is facing growing pressure from prized clients to compensate them for losses following the collapse of the supply chain finance funds linked to Greensill Capital. Decision to do so is one of the first big dilemmas confronting the new chairman as he attempts to clean the bank up. Credit Suisse, of course, has long been found in DOJ, deferred prosecution agreements for its AML woes, and now they're having lost some $10 billion in investors' funds. It's going to be interesting to see how or what Credit Suisse does about this. In one of the most interesting articles I've read in some times, and from a first-time contributor to the Daily Compliance News, Foreign Affairs, Josh Rudolph says that the fight against corruption needs economists, and combating corruption and kleptocracy has been a big part of U.S. foreign policy and a goal that most policymakers, even magma hat-wearing Republicans, generally applaud. But we now need more weapons, according to Rudolph. We need economists for the financial aggressions of covert foreign money being funded directly into the political processes of democracies literally across the world. So a very interesting and I think a different way to look at the fight against bribery and corruption. And we conclude with the Wall Street Journal article that came out today about Bill Gates, who left the Microsoft board amid a probe into a nearly 20-year-old relationship. The board investigated the probe, and several board members thought that Gates was going to have to resign for his 20-year-old conduct, finding that it was no longer suitable for him to be a director at Microsoft. The issue was resolved when Gates resigned from the board to pursue his philanthropic interest. There is no word about really the details of the affair other than both parties agreed it was a consensual affair, and the reporter of the affair, who did so via a letter to Microsoft in 2019, reported that affair ended amicably and that Microsoft treated the reporter with dignity and respect. So an interesting twist to the Gates divorce saga, as it appears it's unclear whether he left Microsoft on his own volition or not. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network and a proud member of C-Suite Radio. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you'll join me again tomorrow.